I think. Yes.
This attendance for this meeting tonight between the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission and Tennessee Valley Authority. We also do have a phone connection set up. I'd just like to verify at first that that connection is working. Ms. Pam Song, are you able to hear us? Okay, very good. Again, welcome. This is a Category 1 meeting between the NRC and Tennessee Valley Authority. What that means is the NRC will be conducting a discussion with Tennessee Valley Authority regarding the Browns Ferry nuclear station. Following the conclusion of the NRC's discussions with Tennessee Valley, the NRC will close that part of the meeting, and then we will open it up for comments and questions from the public. We will have some final closing comments at that point. What I'd like to do is start off with NRC introductions. We'll go to licensee introductions, and again, I'll go back to the phone to make sure that any individuals there can identify themselves if they wish. Start off with, my name is Bill Jones. I am the Deputy Director for the Division of Reactor Projects in the Region 2 office located in Atlanta, Georgia. The Division of Reactor Projects is the division with responsibility for the oversight of each of the nuclear facilities in the Region 2 area. Part of that division consists of branches that have within them resident inspectors who are located at each of the facilities. To my immediate left is Mr. Victor McCree. He is the Regional Administrator for the Region 2 office in Atlanta, Georgia. And to my right is Gene Guthrie. Gene Guthrie is the Branch Chief with responsibility for the oversight of the Browns Ferry plant. Turn over to Gene to introduce his resident inspector staff.
Wanted to take a minute and introduce the resident inspectors that are out at the site with the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. They have an office located right on the facility, and they work every day out of the plant and do inspections at the facility, and they actually live in the community. So we have the senior resident inspector is Dave Dumbacher. And we have Lundy Presley's up on the stage there, and he's one of the resident inspectors. There's actually two other resident inspectors. They actually came in early this morning doing inspection, and so we let them go home since this is an evening meeting. So thank you for your participation.
Turn it over to the licensee for their introductions.
Thank you, Bill. My name is Preston Swafford. I'm the Chief Nuclear Officer for the Tennessee Valley Authority. And to my left here is Keith Polson. He's my Site Vice President here at Browns Ferry. And to his left is a new member of our team, and his name is Jim Morris, and he's our Senior Vice President of Operations for all three of our facilities in Tennessee and Alabama. Bill.
Okay, thank you. I also would like to give the individual on the telephone an opportunity to introduce herself, as well as anyone on the telephone. Ms. Son?
Yes, I'm Pam Song. I'm a reporter with the Chattanooga Times Free Press.
Okay, thank you very much. The purpose of this meeting is a regulatory status and information meeting. First of all, we will have a regulatory meeting with the licensee involving a white finding as well as two white performance indicators, which the NRC has completed its inspection activities for. In addition, the licensee, TVA, will be providing information to us with regard to the supplemental 95003 inspection, and that inspection is one that we have had in works and have had previous meetings with members of the public and with the licensee, and it goes back about a year and a half, involving what is referred to as a red finding, and Mr. Guthrie will discuss that further.
In order to discuss the inspection results that we conducted over the last few months here, and to discuss performance of the licensee as a result of those inspections and our conclusions, I wanted to go over a little bit of background and put these inspections that we did in the context of how we regulate the reactor power plant. So just briefly go over how we assure plant safety at the sites. Really 4 major areas involving training, long-term maintenance. Long-term maintenance covers aging equipment concerns and issues, regulatory compliance at the site, defense in depth. You can see the numbers 1 through 5, and the sort of the bubble there, this containment structure here. The idea of this defense in depth is to have multiple systems that are designed to mitigate any accidents or events that could release radioactivity to the environment, and all these defense in depth systems prevent that. As far as assuring plant safety in these 4 areas, really the implementation of the training, the maintenance, the regulatory compliance, and the defense in depth, so all 4 areas are really, it's critical that the licensee takes responsibilities for those areas and implement those adequately to assure safety at the plant. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission, our mission is to assure public health and safety during operation of nuclear power plants. We have a regulatory framework that we verify and assure that plant safety is maintained, and we do this by looking at 3 strategic performance areas: reactor safety, radiation, and safeguards. Today we're focusing on reactor safety, and primarily it involves the 3 cornerstones over here, which are tied to this reactor safety. And you know, as far as the overall regulatory framework, there's 7 different cornerstones that we look at, and basically we look at that by 2 different methods. We inspect, and we do that through what we call baseline or routine inspections. The resident inspectors that we introduced earlier, they primarily implement baseline inspections, but we also have regional-based inspectors that come out to the facilities, activities at the site. We also have performance indicators that we look at, and that helps us for the areas that we don't specifically inspect. We use these performance indicators as tools of determining safe performance in these areas without as much direct inspection. And then the actual performance indicator results are available on the NRC website for any member of the public to look at. Here on significance thresholds, we treat the performance indicators and the significance the same way we do inspection findings. So you'll see the green, white, yellow with increasing significance. Okay, so through the, once you determine the significance, then you, like I said, you go to the agency action matrix. That's very prescriptive. From the left of the action matrix, the licensee response would be indicative of green findings or issues at the facility, up through all the way over to suddenly laser's not working, but up to unacceptable performance so you can see increasing regulatory response, safety significance, more inspection, management involvement, and regulatory actions as a result of that. So, with that, in that context, there were 3 issues that we have inspected over the recent months. All of those 3 issues were white significance and characterization. They were across the spectrum of all 3 units, and as a result of those white significance issues, by the agency action matrix, we came out and performed individual inspections using our inspection procedure 95001, and you can see the title up there. One of the issues was a white finding. I'll explain what that was. That was an NRC identified issue, affected all 3 units. The other 2 issues that we inspected were the performance indicators that were reported to the NRC by the licensee. They involved, on Unit 3, they involved unplanned scrams, and that was a performance indicator that crossed the threshold into white, and as a result of that, we performed 95001. And then on Unit 1, there was a white performance indicator involving a defense in depth system, if you will, called the high pressure injection system. And that's a safety mitigation system that's used in the event of certain reactor events. That system needs to start up and put water into the core and keep the core cool.
Just to clarify, the white finding or the white PI, that speaks to low to moderate safety significance.
Each one of the inspection procedures are focused on the root cause and the contributing causes, and ensuring that the licensee understands what those are. We also look at the licensee's extended condition and extended cause for those issues, and that they identified what those conditions were and what those causes were. Also, we look at the licensee's corrective actions for the issues that they're sufficient to address the root cause and the contributing causes, and that they'll preclude repetition. The issue was a failure to properly implement the requirements of a plant modification procedure. This is a licensee's procedure, was not adequately implemented, and so adequate training was not performed on these safe shutdown instruction procedures, which are fire protection related procedures, and that was a failure to properly implement that, and it became an NRC identified finding and a violation, and the characterization was white. We completed that inspection. There was one individual, one inspector that came out, inspected for a 3-day inspection effort, and the results of that were documented in the report, identified on the slide up here, and I'll go over what the conclusions were for that inspection in a later slide. The white performance indicator for unplanned scrams on Unit 3, that involves unplanned scrams for 7,000 hours of critical operation. It's characterized as a white significance because there was more than 3 scrams in 4 quarters. As it turns out, 7,000 critical hours is about 4 quarters. So during that period of time, the performance indicator crossed from the green to the white, and so we came out and inspected the licensee's root cause for how they were going to address the issues and objectives that we were looking for, as I just described. The third supplemental inspection that was conducted involved the white performance indicator. Well, I guess, let me skip to that. White performance indicator for high pressure injection system. This was on unit 1. This performance indicator measures the reliability and availability of the system. So the antithesis of that is it's trending negative, is it's measuring the unreliability and unavailability of the system. There was also the focus of these issues that caused unreliability and unavailability was due to a repetitive steam admission valve leak. And then also there was 4 failures that existed over the past 3 years. This indicator is actually a long-term indicator. It's very slow to trend and either going up or down because it's based on the number of hours of system operation and also how long that system is taken out of service to conduct maintenance for either planned maintenance or unplanned maintenance. We had one inspector come out 3 days for this inspection. That was completed on October 17th, and you can see where we documented the results of that inspection in the report on the slide. So all three inspections were conducted by one inspector over a 3-day period. Each inspection, the results of that were exited with the licensee on individual days, the results of which were expressed to the licensee at each one of those exit meetings. And like I said, each one of the results of those were individual inspections. But the conclusions of each of those inspections were similar, and the conclusions were that the root and contributing causes that the licensee conducted were in fact understood by the licensee. The extended condition and extended cause evaluations were sufficiently comprehensive, and the licensee's corrective actions were appropriate to address the root and contributing causes, and that those root and contributing causes would preclude repetition. So as a result of those inspections, we, as part of our exit process with the licensee, because those were white findings, we also conduct regulatory performance assessment meetings after each one of those inspections because they were white findings. And so part of the regulatory process is to inform the licensee, based on our conclusions, what our conclusion or the result of the results of those inspections, how that affects their performance. So we take the time and the opportunity to inform the licensee what the NRC's assessment is. So that's in essence, that's what I'm doing here. The NRC identified white finding that we inspected is being closed. As far as any input to the action matrix, that will stay on the action matrix until the end of the first quarter 2013. And the reason for that is, even though the inspection is closed because the results were satisfactory, for findings, NRC identified findings, those are kept on the action matrix for 4 quarters. The 4th quarter ends in the 1st quarter of 2013. Overall, the NRC assessment summary related to these white issues, TVA continues to operate the plant safely in a manner that preserved public health and safety and protected the environment. And like I said, Unit 1 is still in the multiple repetitive degraded cornerstone, and Unit 2 and Unit 3 are in the regulatory response column. With that, I'll turn it over to Bill.
As you can see, for Unit 1, the licensee for Browns Ferry Unit 1 is in the multiple repetitive degraded cornerstone column. And that is the 95003 inspection activity associated with the red finding for the valve. 2 inspections associated with this supplemental activity. One, to determine whether or not the component testing programs were adequately being implemented. And then 2, to determine whether the maintenance program, which was also a concern identified through our review and documented in our inspection reports, what the extent of the conditions were to ensure that the facility was safe to operate. And we have also documented that phase of the inspection activities. And the NRC has met before the public as well as TBA to discuss the results of those inspection activities. And those inspections are documented in the inspection reports indicated in a 2011 011 inspection report, which is available on the NRC website, either through the ADAMS, which is the Agency Document Management System, and is also available on our public website through the Reactor Oversight Program, specifically under Browns Ferry Nuclear Plant. The same applies for maintenance program activities. We completed that inspection activity. Those results are documented in that inspection report, and that inspection report is also available, and that is under 2011-012. So both of those reports that took an initial look at the root cause and to ensure that the facility was safe to continue to operate are documented and available for public. But we still have 95003, that supplemental inspection activity has not been closed. And that's the part 3. And that's going to be a very extensive inspection activity that looks at the root cause, the contributing causes, the safety conscious work environment of the facility, the corrective action program, and that is scheduled for sometime next year. And Tennessee Valley Authority tonight to give us an idea as to when we can expect them to be ready for us to conduct that inspection. And then Mr. Guthrie, to my right, will be will be the lead team lead for that inspection activity. Now, the inspectors that will be participating in this inspection come from Region 2, as well as the other 4, or the remaining 3 regions, Regions 1, 3, and 4. So we will have a diverse inspection background as well as perspectives going into this inspection activity. It is a very extensive and intrusive inspection that will be conducted sometime next year when the licensee tells us that they are ready. And as I say, we will document the results of that inspection report when we have completed it. In addition, there will be a public meeting to discuss the results of that inspection report, that inspection with the licensee and with members of the public. With that, I'd like to discuss.
Okay, thank you, Bill. I'm going to turn this over to Keith Polson, who will take you through a few slides and ultimately get to the readiness of Browns Ferry for the 003 inspection. Keith.
Okay, so there's 3 things I wanted to discuss tonight. The first is the integrated improvement plan that we have in place, and I have discussed this at previous meetings. Then I wanted to go over some of the results that we're seeing at the site, and then, like Preston said, where we are with readiness for the inspection. So to start out, we do have an integrated improvement plan in place, and that was developed to address the causes of the red finding, also the fundamental problem areas that we came up as we were going through the 95003 inspection readiness, and also to address the independent nuclear safety culture assessment results. Also, it was designed to reduce risk, especially fire risk at the plant, improve equipment reliability at the plant, but the most important thing that I've discussed numerous times in this forum is that all of these things have to be sustainable. And that's what the plan was designed to do. So the status of the plan right now, this plan actually consists of over 1,000 action items. And the last time we met was in August, and I said at that time, by the end of December, we would have approximately 75% of those actions complete. To date, we have 72% of the actions complete. We also have a subset of that which we call designated actions. And these actions are what we determine we need to complete these actions prior to requesting the 95003 inspection. And to date, right now, we have 93% of the designated actions complete. Some of the results cite unit operation. We did set a record for all 3 units consecutive day run at 139 days. We also set another record at the site for 3-unit cumulative run record, which was 949 days. That ended when we took Unit 1 offline for a recent refueling outage. And then currently we have a record run going on Unit 2, which is at 545 days, and we're still counting on that. And Unit 2 will be shut down this spring for a scheduled refueling outage. Under safety, we're also seeing improvements. We currently have over 7 million man-hours without a lost time accident, and that is still continuing. We still count every hour on that. And then also going back, we actually had 2 refueling outages where we bring in almost 3,000 people to the site. We accomplish over 20,000 tasks, and we performed 2 refueling outages with 0 OSHA recordable accidents at the site. This other graph that I have here is for site human performance, and you can see if you look at the arrow up in the right-hand corner, good is actually when the trend's down. So our human performance error rate started in the 4th quartile when compared to the rest of the industry, and right now we're in the 2nd quartile, and we project that after the spring outage on Unit 2, our metrics that we're using to declare that we're ready for the inspection. We actually have 45 metrics, and if you look back in the May timeframe, we had 16 of those metrics were in green status. And you can see as the months go on, all the way up to October, we're continually improving on the green, and the reds and yellows are getting less and less. So we started out with 16 green. We're currently at 29 right now, and we expect the November results will be at 31 green, and then by the end of December, we'll be at 33 out of the 45 in green status. We just completed a Unit 1 refueling outage, and some of the highlights from that. We did, on our high-pressure coolant injection system that was talked about earlier, we did completely refurbish this system. We tore it down to the last nut and bolt, and we put it back together using what we call the little tools, making sure all the tolerances were correct. And we also replaced the steam admission valve that had been causing us some issues in the past. And that was highly successful. Vibrations are lower than they've ever been, and the steam admission valve is closing as expected, as designed. Also during this outage, we replaced 2 residual heat removal, which are safety-related pump motors, and 2 coarse brake pump motors. And so if you look across all 3 units, there's a total of 24 of these motors for these low-pressure safety-related systems, and we have 21 replaced. In the upcoming Unit 2 outage, we'll replace the last RHR motor, and then in the next Unit 1 outage, we'll replace the last 2 core spray motors. We also replaced, for reliability of the unit, main generator circuit breakers. That's now complete on all 3 units. And then we upgraded the automatic voltage regulator, the AVR, on Unit 1, and and that's complete on all 3 units now. So for inspection readiness, highlight here is we do expect to formally request the 95003 supplemental inspection in January of 2013. So, and then we anticipate the on-site inspection will be sometime after the Unit 2 refueling outage, which is in the spring. So the remaining activities that we have before we do request the inspection, we have to satisfy our readiness criteria, which I discussed at previous meetings, and also we have to complete a readiness assessment, which is in progress right now, where we brought in independent people from across the country to look at it. So, turn it back to Preston.
Thank you, Keith. We have done a great deal to improve the material condition of the assets, and I believe the assets are running a little better, and it reflects that we're investing in it. But I think the readiness for this 95003, it goes so much more and so much deeper than just material condition of the asset. It gets at the culture of the employee, the culture of the leadership team, the governance model we've deployed from Chattanooga. All of those things all come together to, I'm going to say, represent the readiness that when your team comes in, we do expect you to have a high-quality product to review. We've done multiple root causes and apparent causes. I think the 3 white inspections, to me, is a bit of a primer, if you will, for how we approached. And I think your results tell us that we hit the mark from the root causes of those issues. And that gives me some faith that the probability that this team will get the fundamental problems identified well for the upcoming 95003 at a higher confidence level. So I don't expect your team to be disappointed in the quality of the readiness of the products. We might not have every indicator green, and we said that from up front, but the goal is to get as many of them heading in the right direction, so the overall sense of the inspection team is that things are heading in the right direction. So, and we certainly aren't giving up that all of them won't get green. We're all over it from an energy and sense of urgency standpoint, but I also don't want to lead the team down a path that maybe, like any given thing, if a plant doesn't respond quite right, we may end up turning a couple, but generally we feel we'll have made substantial progress in that. And overall, the material condition of the plant, the housekeeping standards, things like that, all matter from, I'm going to say, the energy and the safety culture of the employees. We're still measuring that. INPO's been in here the last few weeks looking at those types of issues, and we're taking all of that to continue to move over the next 3 or 4 months as your team gets ready and we make the formal request to make sure that we're not steady here but moving the needle in the right direction. So a lot of energy at the
Can you
state.
kind of give me a feel for what the remaining 7% looks like, Mrs. Orr?
Yeah, a lot of those.
We'll give them a minute.
Yeah, the last remaining actions are primarily like the effectiveness reviews where we've taken actions and pulled things across the line. We want to make sure that we finish what we started. So a lot of them are effectiveness reviews that we said we have to confirm the performance improvements and sustainability prior to the inspection.
We talked about the designated action. Could you elaborate just a little bit more on it?
Yeah, if you will, when we built the inspection readiness criteria, we indicated that we were going to look at the integrated improvement plan holistically and define a set of actions that were designated as being those that were necessary and sufficient for us to have a high degree of confidence that we would make adequate performance improvement and it would be sustainable on site. So that was an evaluation that subset of corrective actions, it was important for us to say that those were done and complete before we felt we could say we were ready for inspection.
There was about 155 of the 1,000 that were the designated actions that we felt displayed the needle movement the most.
We wanted to get a feel for what that looked like. Also, on slide. On slide 6, we talk about the 9503 performance metrics trends, and that you're continuing to improve in that area. As the October 12 column indicates, you're showing continued improvement in the green trends, with the reds continuing to diminish, and some of it looks like maybe some of the yellows are still there. Can you give me a feel for what's in that column? What kind of changes you're seeing? You talk about the performance metrics trend. I'd just like to get a feel for.
Sample of all 45, not just the ones that aren't progressive. Engineering backlogs.
Okay.
There's multiple different design change backlogs, drawing, update backlogs, things like that have grown. And so we've worked with our engineering departments to build a curve that shows sustained performance in reducing those. But even on a couple of these, those are a couple that are red, for example, that we've not moved. But after we got into it, we found out that our definition needed to actually be recalibrated. We found some others that weren't counted in our original count. So we're trying to not only catch those up, but also to make the appreciable improvement that our original target dates were set. But those are, I think, meaningful because we've had, for example, the trips coming out of the Unit 3 outage that got us the white PI. That was a case in several ways that engineering rigor wasn't right, some of the drawing reviews and some of those types of things. So when you get at different metrics, we're trying to display that engineering changes and program improvements that you get from these metric gains is also translatable to the product and rigor that the engineers are executing on the going forward mods that are in front of us right now.
And I think we discussed this. I know Gene has had discussions with you involving preparations for the 9503. Part of the elements that we will be including in the 03 inspection activity is looking at the specifics and how you're defining the improvements that you're seeing, and the sustainability is a very important aspect to the conclusions that we need to draw, also involving your readiness to exit that column of the action matrix. With that, go to the next slide, please. We'll go back. Okay. Before we conclude the portion of the meeting with Tennessee Valley Authority and go to the public comments and questions, I do want to leave this slide up also as to different means of contacting the NRC with any concerns or questions that you may have. I think I also failed to mention that Mr. Roger Hanna with our Public Affairs Office is on hand here today. He's over in the far corner and available for questions. He's also an excellent point of contact for getting information involving both the NRC as well as the NRC's activities at Brown. Aspects of the 03 is after our evaluation, and if we make the determination that it is sustainable, then you would be leaving that column and returning back to, as it currently stands, you would be returning back to the licensee response column, which would then indicate based on inspection activity.